All right, folks, welcome to the news now. We do have breaking news for you out of Chicago right now, where there are reports of an active shooter at a hospital, Mercy Hospital in Chicago, near the far south side right now. We're working to get you guys the very latest details. Heavy police presence and fire emergency crews on scene at Mercy Hospital on the south side following reports of shots fired in the area. This is located at 2525 South Michigan Avenue. Police were warning people to stay out of the area. Fire crews responding to the scene. That's what you're seeing right now, live right here on News Now. Stay right here with us for live and updated news as we continue to monitor this situation here for you, working our very best to get you everything that you need to know. Thank you to our viewers watching from around the country and the world for this breaking news alert. 26th and Michigan Avenue, Mercy Hospital reports of a shooting there at the hospital. Don't know if it was inside the hospital or just outside of it. Working to get you guys some more details, but thank you again for joining us here on News Now. Breaking news alert here. You can see the ambulance is staging in this area. We're continuing to wait for some more updates officially from the police here. You can see the staging area of the first responders here right now. Police are responding to reports of shots fired this afternoon outside of Mercy Hospital in the Bronzeville neighborhood on the city's south side. No word yet on the amount of injuries or people that were shot, and we don't know if there was a suspect or suspects regarding this, but obviously very fluid breaking news situation out there. We're hoping for the very best. Taking a look here at Mercy Hospital, 2525 South Michigan Avenue there on the city's south side, Bronzeville neighborhood right here. You can see first responders really all over this area here. Lots of ambulance trucks here, and we don't know where this shooting occurred. We are hearing some reports that it happened in the lobby. That has been unconfirmed right now. That is unconfirmed. We're waiting for some more official police indications here, but we do have people just running around the area here. Active shooter still. We don't know if that suspect is down yet. Stay right here with us, folks. Very fluid. Still no word yet on the amount of injured. You are taking a look here at this very big police response, though. Anytime you get an active shooter call out, this is a big event. First calls were that a gunman reportedly opened fire inside of the Mercy Hospital there. You see more uniformed Chicago police now going inside of the hospital right here. We're waiting to get some more information here. Fox 32, our sister station right there in Chicago, saying multiple victims in the shooting near Mercy Hospital. Live aerials continue right now. Multiple victims, though, is being reported by the police. You can see people are being evacuated there in the parking lot from the hospital, trying to get everybody out of there. But then once again, police are still looking for the suspect. You got to treat everybody as if they are a suspect there as well inside that hospital, as they got to go really methodical search inside. Think about how many rooms are in a hospital too where a potential suspect could be hiding. Very, very difficult stuff for the police right now. The chief communications officer for Chicago Police Department says that officers are doing a methodical search of Mercy Hospital right now. At least one possible suspect has been shot. Please avoid the area of 26th and Michigan. That was once again from the communications officer for the Chicago Police Department.
My sources are telling me that they've taken the officer away to Northwestern. They're still trying to secure the building here. Several shots were fired. The shooter, we heard on the scanner, had an assault rifle, and that is exactly what the witness said as well. We're hearing the officer, again, has been taken to another hospital, according to my sources.
And the shooter had been referred to by our witness, John Soto, a few minutes ago as to he saw the assault weapon. My sources
are telling me that they've taken the officer away to Northwestern. They're still trying to secure the building here.
The evacuation would mean that the medical care, certainly in the emergency department area, would be presumably at a minimum at this point, if it's continuing at all.
Yes. John, are you there, our witness?
I think we lost John.
We're going to get him back in a second.
Okay.
But in the meantime, again, this is at Mercy Hospital. John, who was our witness, was telling us what he saw, and we want you to hear exactly what he said happened this afternoon. John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks for calling back in. We want you to just recap exactly what you heard and saw this afternoon for our viewers who are just joining us.
Okay. Well, we were just in the area scouting for, a repo, and we heard a little bit of yelling, and we heard shots fired. As soon as we heard the shots, like I said before, we left it up to police to do their job, and we just kind of got out of there. They actually showed up pretty fast, too. I mean, not much I can really say, but just be careful.
And John, tell us again about in terms of any victims, victims of the shooting that you may have seen. Did you see anybody?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we listen to police scanners, on a daily basis. So as it's going on, I mean, the delay is only like a minute or two, but they called the 10-1, pushed the officer down, and then we were right there. We heard it, and we're still trying to get out of it. Then the cops show up, and then what they said, the man, white hoodie, came out, assault rifle, and just started shooting at the police. And then he went back inside, and I guess they shot him on the first floor in the radiology department. That's where they had him in custody. And that was it. And as far as the officer down, they were looking for him. He didn't respond on his radio. So then I guess his partner found him on his radio. So then I guess his partner found him or something.
Okay.
All right, John. Thank you for that. Again, we're waiting information as to the condition of the officer who was shot, and again, the report multiple. Who knows what number that really is and what that means? But you can see the police and ambulances. There are fire personnel there as well. Everybody trying to just get a handle on this and figure it all out. So we're still waiting to hear more information. And this time, I imagine it's a very busy area this time of the afternoon too, Mike. I mean, down there in that
and that vehicle, Corey, at the top of the shot right now, slightly to the left of center, is one you don't normally see. That's a pretty heavily armored Chicago vehicle, and the team that would respond to a guy with a rifle shooting people, including police officers, is probably that's probably their vehicle, one of their vehicles.
Right.
They've obviously responded in full force here.
We understand that some of the employees who are there at Mercy Hospital have been taken to warming buses. They're not really being allowed to leave the scene because they want to make sure everyone is accounted for, which is understandable. So we're hearing that from people who work there in the hospital. And then some people obviously have to go back to work because the work at the hospital is never done. So some of them are not leaving. They just have to be counted, and then eventually they say they will return. So this is at Mercy Hospital, 26 in Michigan. If you're just joining us here at 4 o'clock, this is live from the scene where an officer we are hearing has been shot. We have no word on his or her condition. We are hearing multiple reports of where that officer was taken, either Northwestern or University of Chicago, and we're working to confirm that. Again, we are also hearing from the police spokesperson that there were multiple victims shot. We're not hearing how many, and he also reports that they are still doing a methodical search of Mercy Hospital. to see if there are any other victims. The offender, possible offender, he writes, was shot. We're not hearing about the offender's condition as well. But again, this is multiple people shot, including an officer at Mercy Hospital on 26th and Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And of course, our eyewitness, John Soto, was telling us a little bit about that as well. Now I'm informed that Larry Yellen is on the scene now, and perhaps Larry can fill us in a little more about what's going on. Larry, what do you know?
Good morning, Don. We are at the southwest side of the hospital parking lot. We still hear sirens. Obviously, you can see it from the chopper. There's a heavy police presence, and there are police ambulances and squad cars all around us. I'm going to step away here, and I'm going to try and have my photographer point out a couple of the locations. Ahead of me, you see an ambulance with some red lights and some blue lights in front of it. An eyewitness who was in the emergency room at the time told me a couple seconds ago that that's where the victim in the parking lot was gunned down. According to him, she was shot once. It was a female, and then this gunman stood over her and continued to shoot. Now, that is not verified by police. That's an eyewitness who was watching from a distance from the emergency room. About 100 yards to the left is the emergency room entrance. Bob, if you could pan over there. There's a lot of activity there also. The gunman said that the gunman, according to the eyewitness, did come inside the hospital. He was in the emergency room waiting to be served, and he said everybody was told to put their heads on the floor and cover themselves. He was unable to get a good look at the gunman. He did believe, however, it was an African American. He wasn't sure what the individual was wearing. And then later on, once that area was cleared, police escorted them out of the hospital. As we've been standing here, if you can pan to the left, Bob, we've seen hundreds of hospital personnel being moved to warming buses, all of them evacuated from the hospital. As the shooting was taking place, they've been brought outside. They were moved to a holding area at the south end of the parking lot, and now lots of doctors and others in the area here all being moved to warming buses where they will be protected from the cold. Some of them may be witnesses. Some of this area we're standing in, it's possible there could be shell casings here because there are police all over the place. We don't know exactly how much shooting took place. We don't know how many people are wounded. Maybe you've got an advantage on that. But that's the latest we have from here on the southwest side of the parking lot. Let me toss it back to you now. If we can, if we've got that eyewitness queued up, why don't we listen to his description? Okay, we're going to hang on one more second. Hang on. Okay. And we're being asked now to move to the out of this area here because, as I said, it looked like there's a lot of police activity here, and it's possible we're a little bit too close to the hospital for the police to continue investigating the shooting. So we're going to move from this area right now. You've got the soundbite. His name is Stephen White. Let's toss to it now then. Go ahead, let's toss to it, and you guys take it from there. We're going to move out of this area. Okay? Thanks, Larry. You were in the emergency.
I was in the emergency room when I seen the shooter first. With the lady standing outside, and we heard some shots. Bam, 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 bam. So we all went to the window. She's on the ground. He was the car getting from a distance. But I can tell he was a black guy. He was a black guy. Black guy.
What kind of a weapon did he have?
First he had a revolver, not a revolver, automatic. Automatic. That's when he was shooting at the police and her. But the way he did her, she was just laying there. He just turned around, just after he shot the police, just turned around, just pow, pow, shot two more times. That shit is crazy, man.
That was the woman in the parking lot.
The woman in the parking lot. That's who got shot. Then they said the officers got shot in the emergency room. I didn't see that one, but that's what they said. So we heard a lot of more shots inside the emergency room than going upstairs. The officers kept telling us to stay down, stay down, stay down, stay down in the emergency room. That's crazy, man. She was standing right there. I guess she was leaving, coming home from work, or on her way to work. He just ambushed her.
An employee of the hospital?
Yes. It's sad. It's just sad.
How do you know it was an employee? Because
she had on all the green scrubs and stuff. So she had to be an employee at the hospital.
He shot her and then he stood over her and continued to shoot?
She shot her a couple more times. Yeah. That's just sad.
Anybody in the emergency room get hurt?
No.
Did he get inside the hospital?
Yeah, he's inside. He was inside. That's why they got us all out. He's inside the hospital. We heard gunshots inside the hospital.
Okay, an eyewitness speaking to Larry Yellen just a few minutes ago, talking about the gunman shooting a woman in the parking lot repeatedly, and then, according to the witness, the officer was shot in the emergency room area. At last report, listed in critical condition.
Yes, Anthony Guglielmi, the spokesperson for Chicago Police, says a Chicago police officer has been shot in the active shooter incident at Mercy Hospital. He is in critical condition but receiving excellent care. Please send your prayers. He just tweeted that 6 minutes ago.
All right, we're watching an ambulance escorted by police cars heading, we're guessing, to University of Chicago Medical Center?
It appears to me that they're going south there. So that's a guess. We are hearing, though, that the officer was taken or is being taken to the University of Chicago. So that would be right. But we don't know who's in that ambulance. Again, it could also be the shooter. So if the shooter is still alive. We're just hearing that the possible offender, according to the police spokesperson, has been shot. We don't know the offender's condition or where that offender was taken.
So from the helicopter shot, we saw someone on a gurney being loaded into that ambulance, and then there are a half dozen or more Chicago police squad vehicles that are accompanying it, leading it, and trailing it, and closing the cross streets as they appear to be heading south.
All right, let's check in with Elizabeth Matthews, who is also live on the scene. Elizabeth.
Thank you for being willing.
That's right, guys. We have another eyewitness account here. Tracy, she's a patient. She was coming here to the hospital. She says that she saw the shots fired. She also heard the shots fired. Let's interview Tracy right now. Tracy, what did you hear? What did you see?
What happened was I was exiting the building. I was going to the vehicle, and all of a sudden I heard 5 to 6 gunshots. Me and my girlfriend, we ducked behind the car. Then we suddenly saw a maroon Charger sped off and jumped the curve and made a right out of the parking lot. Then suddenly the police pulled in and they exchanged fire to the police, which caused the police to have to back up and retreat. Then the detectives pulled up, they jumped out, all guns was drawn. Then you heard some more gunshots. So I ran back into the building and say, they shooting outside. Next thing you know, we get Cold Silver called over the intercom. That means lock yourself where you are. So we locked ourselves in the utility room, and then we heard Cold Blue twice. Cold Blue was announced twice, 5 minutes apart, which means somebody done died or 2 people done died. Then we heard Cold Silver for the Family Center, which is that door right there. So they had to run in and retreat. How you know it was 2 shooters? Because it was an exchange. It was like pow, 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 pow. It was extreme, and it was very loud, and it was close. So this is what happened. I don't know after that. SWAT came and got us out the utility room and made us walk across the street.
The people in the Charger were shooting at another group of people.
I think the people that was in the Charger was shot at. And they was retreating.
By another shooter or by police?
By another shooter. No, the police wasn't even here yet. The police was not here yet. When the other shots started going off, the police pulled in and they started firing at the police, which caused the police to have to go in reverse and get out of gunfire.
What made you go back into that building?
Because the shots was coming so strong, so closely. I thought I was going to be hit by a bullet. I just got radiation. I can't hardly breathe.
The corner. This is not a secure area. I need you guys on the.
All right, guys, we're getting moved. That was Tracy. We're also being moved. I think you heard my colleague Larry Yellen earlier, being moved by police. They're saying that this is not a secure area, so we're going to toss it back and try to get the rest of Tracy's story. We'll send it back to you guys.
Okay, Elizabeth, thank you.
Nice.
We'll check in with you in a minute. We want to also hear what Larry is telling us. So, Elizabeth, let us know. Okay.
Larry's not quite there, but the plot sort of changes a bit here with the information of someone in a car in the parking lot exchanging fire with someone else on the ground, which we hadn't heard of until now. And then apparently someone then ducked back into the building, but we're not sure the timeline here. Obviously a crazy scene out there, and she described it very well. She had just been in there for treatment and, as she mentioned, encountered it and then ran inside and smartly hid in the utility room until she was rescued by a SWAT team. So just an incredible situation down there.
This ambulance appears to be just a few blocks away now from the University of Chicago Medical Center.
They're right there turning the curve right near the DuSable Museum, so they are heading there toward 57th Street. We still don't know who is in this ambulance, but this is, again, being escorted by a number of officers, so it is safe to assume that it is either the officer or the suspect who we hear has been shot. They're now on 57th Street, so the University of Chicago is just a couple of blocks away. So again, if you're just joining us, there were multiple shots fired at Mercy Hospital this afternoon at 26th and Michigan, right outside the emergency room. We're hearing from multiple witnesses, some who say they saw the shooter outside of the hospital first, shoot a woman multiple times, and then go into the hospital where the officer may have been shot inside the hospital. We're still getting reports coming in, but the police spokesperson, Anthony Guglielmi, reports that they are officers doing a methodical search of Mercy Hospital, at least one possible offender shot. They're still saying to avoid the area at 26th and Michigan.
And as you can tell just a moment ago, when the police came over and shooed Elizabeth and some other media folks out of the way, the gentleman said, hey, it's not safe here. This is not a safe area. You need to move away. We're looking at video now that occurred right after the shooting, as we understand it.
Yes, that's at the corner there of 26th and Michigan, where you can see all the officers responded. So that's the video that's on our air right now. And you can see the huge response here this afternoon. This happened, and then according to witnesses, it was just minutes later that officers showed up, probably seconds, because as you know, the police district is there on 18th and State. Right. So they just drove down the street, where according to the most recent witness we heard, who was with Elizabeth, they exchanged gunfire with a shooter in the parking lot, and then they were getting all of these messages, I guess, over their system to evacuate and to, lock themselves into rooms.
Right. Well, the information just is starting to creep out just bit by bit. Larry Yellen is on the scene as well, once again, in a safe location, I presume. Larry, what's going on?
Yeah, as far as we can tell, we're in a safe location. The police moved us here. All of the cameras that were in the middle of the block on Michigan Avenue, outside the emergency room entrance and parking lot, have now been moved to the southwest corner of 26th and Michigan. So we're much further away than we were earlier. Earlier, as we pointed out, we were able to see a location where one eyewitness told us a woman had been shot in the parking lot. We also had a better view of the emergency room entrance. We're hearing from several different witnesses, all of them, though, repeating that there were a number of gunshots. They all seem to be saying the pop, 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 pop. One witness suggesting there might have even been more than one gunman involved here. Right now, we're waiting for an official police briefing. We don't know if that will happen shortly or if we're an hour or two away from there, but we are hoping that they'll come to this area at 26th and Michigan and clear up some of the confusion. Just number one, as to is there an offender still on the loose? Number two, how many people have been wounded? Get us the conditions on the victims here and tell us exactly what's going on. But obviously they've got to deal with the situation inside the hospital first. Right now, though, all of the media moved to the southwest corner. Everybody gathering here, and we hope to get an update at some point soon. Back to you guys in the studio.
Larry, thank you very much for that. Larry Yellen on the scene, and the gentleman he talked to a few minutes ago who witnessed quite a bit of what happened, talked about actually witnessing the gunman shooting a woman at close range several times.
Outside the hospital.
Just right outside the entrance, right?
Yes. If you're wondering what you're looking at, this is the bridge right there on Michigan that crosses over the Stevenson, and Mercy Hospital is on the south side right there of the Stevenson. So this is the scene right outside Mercy Hospital. They've obviously shut down that bridge right there going across to Michigan. So this is an active shooter situation. We were just hearing that Mayor Emanuel is at Public Safety Headquarters with Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson, and they are monitoring the events unfolding there at Mercy Hospital. At last check, Anthony Guglielmi, who is the Chief Communications Officer for Chicago Police, said that the officer is in critical condition, and we're hearing that the officer was taken to the University of Chicago in critical condition. So right now, we're just waiting to get more information. This is the parking lot outside of Mercy Hospital that you're looking at right now. On the left of your screen is the front door of Mercy. You can see the multiple ambulances there, the parking lot there to the right. This shooting, according to our witnesses, happened right outside the front door, where a shooter in a hoodie was outside there, and one witness says exchanged gunfire with police. That may have been after, another witness tells us, the gunman shot a woman outside the front door, and then at some point that officer was shot. So that is the information we have. When they say multiple people have been shot, it could be the officer and that woman. We don't know if there are additional victims. The communications officer for Chicago Police says that they are doing a methodical search of Mercy Hospital to make sure there are no additional victims. We're also hearing that people who work inside Mercy Hospital, not all of them have been allowed to leave because they need to make sure everyone has been accounted for. So they're taking to warming buses where they are counting to make sure there are no additional victims. And then many of them have to, as you know, in an emergency room, return to work. They cannot close because they all do have to return to work if they are there for their shift. So this has been, you know, something that is obviously disrupted the day, but the work continues here. So that officer, again, taken to UFC, those workers still have to go back into this emergency room at Mercy where this shooting has just happened.
Yeah, and I think the headline continues to be the fact that this officer is in critical condition, as we understand it. Anthony Guglielmi from the police department said he is in critical condition, but receiving excellent care, and then please send your prayers. And you just you hope and pray that he can pull through, but we're waiting to hear word on just exactly what his situation is. But lots going on in the South Side right now, still trying to determine. We're hearing it. You know, it's fascinating to hear different witnesses, little chunks of what they experienced. One witness described a back and forth shooting between somebody in a car who was pulling out of the parking lot and somebody who'd come out of the hospital. Another witness talked to us about the gunman that he saw shooting a woman at close range. Another witness told us about the officer who had been shot. So all kinds of bits and pieces coming our direction as to how they all connect, and the timeline of events, it's difficult to determine with any certainty right now. But we've got Elizabeth Matthews on the scene, Larry Yellen as well, and a good shot of just outside the entrance here from Air Fox right now as we're trying to just pick up any other bits of information we can and pass them along to you.
We're hearing the officer again taken to University of Chicago in critical condition and not great condition. Right here, we just saw someone loaded into an ambulance. So it sounds like they're still doing searches of the hospital, and there could be additional victims. So that is what you're looking at right now. So again, this is outside the emergency room at Mercy Hospital. We're still getting new information every second.
It seems like at this point we can fairly safely say that there are 3 people who have been injured, and obviously could be very well could be more. But the officer, the gunman, and then this woman that we continue to hear about who was shot at close range. So beyond that, it's unclear.
We do have some video that is just coming in from inside the hospital. Can we run that? Okay.
There we go.
So this was again this afternoon. At Mercy Hospital at about, gosh, almost an hour ago now, were the first reports of shots fired near 26th and Michigan near Mercy Hospital. That was initially the call. And then we were hearing that the shots were right outside Mercy Hospital. So this is video that was shot inside of the police response. And as you can see, officers are just searching the hallways here, trying to be very careful.
They don't know what they're going to find. Right. They have no idea. We're told Larry is back with us once again with a witness. Larry Yellen, go ahead, sir.
Not an eyewitness, maybe not even an ear witness, but Miss Pierre Moore was in the office building kitty corner from the hospital, and she's going to tell us just what happened after she heard the shooting, then went to the window to see what was going on. Pierre, what was going on?
Well, as I looked out the window, I seen a lot of activity that's going on, like now, police, fire trucks, people look like they getting escorted from the hospital.
And you've been talking with one of the people who was in the hospital at the time, and tell us what she saw.
Well, she was said that she was getting ready to come out of the hospital when she heard the shooting. And actually, I've been knowing Tracy since she was a little girl, so I'm glad to know that she's okay.
Have you heard reports from her as to other people being shot and injured?
I was trying to get the story from her as we were walking. She got a little tired, so I set her right there. I'm sure she'll probably tell me some other things.
Now, you work in the office building here, Kitty. Is it related to Mercy Hospital, this building? What do you do?
Some of the people that work in this building work over at Mercy Hospital, like myself. I do work at the hospital a couple of days a week.
Yeah. Let me ask you, have you ever had any training for an emergency like this at the hospital? Do they have routines where they do active shooter training or things like that, just in case something like this might happen?
I'm sure that they do. I'm sure that they have a plan in place for that.
But as far as you know, you never participated.
I never participated because I'm solely here at my office 3 days a week. So I'm over in the hospital 2 days a week.
And let me ask your thoughts, just as a resident of Chicago, but also somebody in the United States, with the Tree of Life shooting that happened in Pittsburgh, with so many other shootings that have happened. When you saw this happening at the hospital, what went through your mind?
I was like, oh my God, not again. Not again. This possibly couldn't be happening.
I'm sure those thoughts are echoed by everybody.
Oh, yes.
Thanks very much, Ms. Moore, for coming over. I appreciate it. Okay. Corey and Dawn. Corey and Dawn, that's the latest. Not an eyewitness, but somebody who has talked to someone who was in the hospital, providing a little new information. Once again, gunshots fired in the hospital. One person shot in the parking lot, as far as we know. The police confirming very little at this point, but as we talk to more and more witnesses out here, we're able to piece together a little bit more about just what's been happening. Back to you guys in the newsroom.
Okay, Larry, thank you very much. Again, we understand police are still searching Mercy Hospital very carefully, just in case there is another gunman that they have not been able to find just yet. And so that's part of what is going on right now. And again, we understand through bits and pieces of information coming from the police department and witnesses that the officer in critical condition, receiving excellent care, and the gunman, according to Anthony Guglielmi and other witnesses, at least one possible shooter was shot, as we've described a couple of times already. But that comes officially from the police department as well, and that the mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and police superintendent Eddie Johnson, we're told, are at police headquarters monitoring the situation, all the events that are unfolding at Mercy Hospital.
A number of officers have gone to the University of Chicago to be with that officer, and we're just told that they have to go outside. Only bosses are being allowed inside University of Chicago with that officer in critical condition. So we're hoping for the best there, but that's the scene at the University of Chicago. What you're looking at here is Mercy Hospital, where you see officers are still outside, and as Corey just mentioned, they're doing that methodical search of the hospital inside, where shots were fired this afternoon about an hour ago. We're hearing that some of them were outside and some of the shots were inside. The updates we have been getting are coming from the police spokesperson, who says it was a very active shooter scene there. So they were trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And you heard witnesses earlier, if you're just joining us, tell us that they saw the shooter outside the hospital with an assault rifle. Another witness says that the shooter shot a woman outside. Another witness says that the officer might have been shot inside, but there was a huge police response. Another witness says that officers exchanged gunfire with the shooter. Right. So multiple reports of a lot of gunfire this afternoon at Mercy Hospital. Yeah,
that's one thing we're safe to say right now. Lots of bullets flying in the area just outside the hospital, near the emergency room. And as to what exactly went on inside, it's hard to tell. But again, trying to find out, especially the condition of the officer right now. Last we heard, critical. He is at the, as we mentioned a couple of times, University of Chicago hospital right now. And as for if there are any other gunmen or people that inside the hospital that need to be found, the police are still searching and trying to determine if it is safe inside. We see, do we see someone being carried out right now on a stretcher? Or is that an empty stretcher? But why would it be carried like that? Let me see if we can tell. Hard to see right now.
Yeah, it could be equipment there.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody's in there, but we could be wrong. It's hard to see. Yeah. But we continue to monitor the situation. We've sent Larry Yellen over to the University of Chicago to try to get a better sense of what's happening with the officer there. And we have Elizabeth Matthews trying to find a safe spot to report for us from that location as well. And this continues to unfold. Again, it's been about an hour since shots first rang out, and we began to hear bits and pieces of just a crazy scene at Mercy Hospital in the Bronzeville neighborhood, again on the south side, 26th and Michigan, not far from McCormick Place, sort of hard against the Stevenson Expressway. I'm sure you've seen it at some point if you haven't been there before. And just a terrible situation that we're trying to get our arms around right now.
Yes, if you're just joining us, this happened an hour ago now at Mercy Hospital. Multiple shots fired. You see officers there still on the scene. And again, officers are also at the University of Chicago with the officer who has been shot. We understand that it is a male officer. The name has not yet been released. There are multiple officers there in support at the University of Chicago, but right now bosses are the only ones being allowed inside. We have not heard anything about the condition of the shooter, only that the shooter has been shot. We don't know where the shooter was taken or if the shooter has been killed. We don't know anything about the shooter yet other than the shooter has been shot.
Well, yes, and I also think it's important that the way the police department's information came to us, a shooter, in other words, they're not exactly sure there was just one. So they want to make sure that if in fact there's more than one, that they get the other people involved.
Yes.
So that still continues as far as we can tell. And we saw the video a little while ago about as police officers first entered that complex as they very carefully went door to door trying to do their search, as the department spokesman said, a methodical search of the hospital, the entire complex there, to make sure no one else is involved. And here's the video we referred to that we showed you earlier, but you can see how tentatively some of the policemen are walking from down the hall and trying to go room to room and just make sure nobody dangerous is hiding inside. You know, we heard from one witness earlier, fascinating account of what she saw, bullets going back and forth between, as she described it, some people in a vehicle, a red car in the parking lot, maroon I believe is what she referred to it as, and a man that had come out of the hospital, and bullets flying back and forth, and she ran inside, and she said she hid in a utility closet and heard a lot of commotion and finally was rescued by a SWAT team and escorted out. But just can you imagine, you're there for some kind of a procedure or to visit a friend, and all of a sudden this evolves out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find out, which way do I go to escape? What do you do?
It sounds like it was a chaotic scene, obviously, this afternoon. There were so many reports that they were hearing to evacuate, and some were told to lock themselves into rooms. And we're hearing that some employees were taken to warming buses so that they could be counted and make sure that no one else was shot or injured. So the scene is obviously still unfolding, we are hearing.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we can listen back once again to one of the witnesses. Larry Yellen was able to talk to a gentleman who was right in the middle of it as it began to unfold. Let's listen to that.
You were in the emergency?
I was in the emergency room when I seen the shooter first. There was a lady standing outside, and we heard some shots. Bam, 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 bam. So we all went to the window. She's on the ground. Then he turned back around, and he just shot her. Bow, bow. Then he started shooting at the police. Then he ran up inside the main entrance inside the hospital. The police came behind him. Then he was in the emergency room. We heard shots back there. And they said some officer must have got shot. I don't know, but I know I see him when he killed that woman.
What did he look like?
I didn't see his face because the emergency room is here. Yeah. And he's over there. See, when the car got the car out there, it was from a distance. But I can tell he was a black guy. He was a black guy. Black guy.
What kind of a weapon did he have?
He had a revolver, not a revolver, automatic. Automatic. That's when he was shooting at the police and her. But the way he did her, she was just laying and he just turned around, just after he shot the police, just turned around, just bow, bow, shot two more times. That shit is crazy, man.
That was the woman in the parking lot.
The woman in the parking lot. That's who got shot. Then they said the officers got shot in the emergency room. I didn't see that one. But that's what they said. So we heard a lot of more shots inside the emergency room than going upstairs. The officers kept telling us to stay down, stay down, stay down, stay down in the emergency room. That's crazy, man. She was standing right there. I guess she was leaving, coming home from work, on her way to work. He just ambushed her.
An employee of the hospital?
Yes. It's sad. It's just sad.
How do you know it was an employee?
Because she had on all them green scrubs and stuff. So she had to be an employee at the hospital.
They shot her and then he stood over her and continued to shoot?
She shot a couple more times. Yeah. That's just sad.
Anybody in the emergency room get hurt?
No.
Did he get inside the hospital?
Yeah, he's inside. He was inside. That's why they got us all out. He's inside the hospital. We heard gunshots inside the hospital.
Yeah. All right. Again, this is the witness that you were just hearing who was in the emergency room. You know, what we don't know is whether the gunman knew that woman who was leaving work. And so it sounds like the gunman just walked up to her and started shooting, and there was a huge police response almost immediately. And so another witness tells us that shooter exchanged gunfire with police who responded, which may have been when the officer was shot. But that was about an hour ago here at Mercy Hospital.
Interesting to note that last witness who saw much of the initial shooting talked about the woman wearing hospital garb and figured she was an employee there. I mean, that was his take on it. As to whether they were connected in some way. Who knows right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it sounds like an awful scene.
Yeah, awful scene there. And as we mentioned before, the officer, we believe, was shot while chasing the gunman in the emergency room area. That seems to be the case as of now. No absolute confirmation on that just yet either. But you can see just tremendous presence on the scene even now, trying to just determine if there's any other danger that remains at this point for anyone. It's hard to know right now.
All right, again, this is Mercy Hospital at 26th and Michigan. About an hour ago, multiple people shot. We're hearing a woman was shot outside, an officer shot. It is a male officer. We're hearing the officer is in critical condition and was taken to the University of Chicago. So we are not getting a lot of information, just that there were multiple people shot there at the hospital.
Right. And the officer, again, at U of C right now with the mayor and the police superintendent trying to coordinate efforts from police headquarters, as we understand it right now. And Larry Yellen is heading to the University of Chicago Hospital now. And right now we're looking at some video from a bit earlier as it appears to be patients or perhaps some hospital workers as well as they leave the building. They were evacuated, and many of them with their hands up to indicate they were just part of the group of folks who were caught in the middle of this terrible shooting that went on today. And as they're slowly walking towards their cars, towards their vehicles, and as we mentioned earlier, some of the hospital employees were taken to warming buses that were brought into the scene as they could escape the hospital and any potential danger there, but at the same time stay nearby because, as you mentioned earlier, Dawn, their work continues to need to be done to take care of the folks inside who are there to be taken care of. So that'll, as to how they're escorted back in and what's going on inside with the patients, it's an interesting dilemma, obviously.
That's the thing, everyone has to still care for patients there. I'm getting text messages from a friend who's a physician there and said that she just left at 1 o'clock. So, you think about what may have happened while you were there. She just left the emergency room just minutes, about, I'd say, 2 hours before this happened. So this is, again, at Mercy Hospital where the work still continues. Some people do have to return to work. Okay. Sorry, I keep getting information here from people on the scene.
Well, hopefully we'll hear from Larry soon from the hospital as well. And we saw it earlier. It was interesting with Elizabeth Matthews reporting as she was interviewing an eyewitness who described just a chaotic scene, exchange of gunfire just in front of Mercy Hospital between one of the gunmen and other people in a car, and back and forth. And then all of a sudden a police spokesperson. Okay. And do we have that now? Okay, let's go to Elizabeth Matthews.
Trying to help any patient, any visitor that came into the hospital today. And Clarence, I know we just spoke about it, but can you just recap where you were and what your actions were from that point on? Well, the location was undisclosed, but at the same time, I was just trying to find shelter for those patients. So you were watching those patients. You heard the code silver. Yes, of course. Walk me through that. What does that mean? It's we're an active shooter. And what is your training in that situation? Kind of what do you do from that? I'm not security, right. But I do wear a tag, and it has all the codes on it, which all employees should have. So if you follow this one tag, then everything should be all right. So I'm cold. I'm sorry.
What's the first thing you did when you heard that, though?
I took the patients to safety. That's the best thing to do. You know, I couldn't leave them because they were, you know, disabled. It was just tough. I would rather put myself in harm's way than to let them get hurt.
Clarence, where were you in the hospital when this happened?
I work in the ER, in the emergency room.
Where the shooting took place?
I have no idea, sir.
Did you hear shots?
No.
Did you hear shots?
Yes, I heard shots.
How many do you think?
It's hard to say.
What was the ER like at that time?
Oh, chaos. 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 You ever seen a zebra get loose in a zoo? That's what it was like.
But you were more concerned about your patients.
That's correct.
Than yourself.
That's correct.
How many patients did you try to get out yourself?
I had 4 with me. 4.
And what happened to them? Where'd they go?
Wheelchair. One was in a wheelchair, and I got him out, came back and got the other guy, put him in a car. Patient, I don't even know this patient's name. He let me put that other patient in his car, and then the other guy, he came out. Police got everybody else to safety. So.
And what's the hospital told you? What are you supposed to do? Just supposed to wait this out until you can go back in?
I have no idea.
While you were doing all that, what were you thinking?
There is a God. That's it.
Had you guys trained for this kind of scenario inside the hospital? Tell us if you've done that before.
Well, we have techniques and stuff that we go over. You know, everybody should be smart enough. We've seen it across the world. You know, the many shootings that's happening. So, I mean, it's really nothing that can prepare you for this, but situations like this.
Have you had drills? Have you had active shooter drills?
Repeat that again?
Have you had active shooter drills?
I haven't been a part of nothing like that. Maybe security have, but, you know, it's just natural instinct kicked in today. That's it. That's all. God intervened. We was able to get everybody out safe, and that's about all I have to say. All right. I'm Cole. I'm going to go meet my wife.
One more time, because we're live on ABC 7 right now. Take us from the beginning, your account of what you experienced, where you were when the shots began.
I was in the ER. We was told that something happened terrible outside, and our first goal was to start getting patients out of the rooms. And I grabbed who I could, took them to safety, and locked them in. And that's when I just heard, you know, the noise from behind the doors and everything.
You locked people in. To describe the effort to try to just protect people.
I mean, it was a scary situation to bring them out because CPD was doing their job, and you don't know if the active shooter was down the hall or not. And you know, but you had to put the blinders on and just keep moving forward, and that's what I did.
And where is the ER in relation to where those gunshots were fired?
I don't know where the shots were fired, so I don't know. All I heard was noise.
And there was chaos. I mean, describe the chaos inside that ER at the time.
Like I said, let an elephant or a zebra loose in a zoo. I mean, it's going to be a lot of chaos. Everybody's going to run for the gates.
Sir, what's your name and what do you do?
My name is Clarence Smith. I'm an ER 7.
Clarence Smith?
Thank y'all.
Clarence Smith.
Thank you.
So, guys, that was Clarence. He works in the emergency room. He said that first and foremost, they didn't really hear shots fired, but they knew that something bad had happened. And so their top priority in that situation, of course, is to try to get the patients to safety. Some were put in cars. He doesn't exactly know where those patients are right now. He said that one was put in somebody else's car, wasn't even in their car. But the situation out here is still very fluid. We believe, I asked him, I don't know if this was on camera, off camera, we asked him, you know, are your coworkers, are some still inside? And he couldn't answer that. He doesn't know. And of course, we're pushing over an hour since this obviously happened, and he doesn't know if some of his coworkers are still inside. Eric, can we try to flip around and kind of show the scene a little bit? If we can, there's still flashing lights all around. So we're at 26th and Michigan here. Let me get around this. As you can see, there's just a ton of police activity here. We have seen state police here, SWAT is here, and also K-9 units. We don't know exactly what's going on. We hope to get some sort of update from Chicago police. We're told, even though most of the media is here, we're told that a press conference might be happening at the University of Chicago Medical Center, which is where the injured officer, who we believe is in critical condition, was taken. There was also one other person, at least one other person, injured, and the offender might also be injured. We don't know where those the other victim and the other offender, were taken at this point, at least out here on scene. We don't know, but we do know that that one police officer in critical condition was taken to University of Chicago Medical Center. So for right now, this is the situation out here. It's very fluid. We're all kind of pinned in. The media is kind of pinned in where we are. And what happens is we see people walk up to us, and you can tell that maybe they've been involved in this situation in some capacity as a witness, because you can kind of see it on their face. So we ask, can we talk to you? What did you see? What did you hear? And they've been giving us their accounts. So that's just kind of what we've been doing. That's what's going on here at 26th and Michigan, right outside Mercy Hospital. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
Elizabeth, we are hearing that there are some people still inside who I've been talking with. Some workers who just left are still talking to their coworkers who are inside, and they're saying that they have been locked into various rooms, and there are officers still scanning the hospital, which is understandable.
One patient we talked to, Tracy, I don't know if you remember several minutes ago, Tracy, she told us her story about maybe some sort of gun battle outside, and then she ran back inside the hospital. She's a cancer patient, 4-year survivor. She was coming here for radiation. She was walking out. That's when she saw that gun battle. And so she herself sheltered in place when she ran back in the hospital and realized that the shooters were coming in, shooters were coming back in the hospital. She had to shelter in place. She said she was in a utility room. There were 4 of them, a receptionist and some other people. Of course, she's a patient. She was in a utility room for about 15 minutes until a security guard came up and let them out. So what we're hearing is that people, either they heard the shots fired or they come across the radio inside the hospital. They heard code silver or code blue. Apparently code silver is to shelter in place. So once they heard that, I don't know if it said code silver, shelter in place, or if people just know what code silver means inside of a hospital, but they heard that message come across the scanners inside of the hospital, inside the radio, and so they sheltered in place, whether it was behind a desk, behind a row of chairs, we're hearing in some cases, or inside of a utility room. And I can't even wrap my mind around what that's like. You're a patient, you're coming here for treatment, you're leaving, you're almost to your car, and in this case, Tracy, she saw the shots fired. She didn't get a good look at the offender or the offenders. She says that there were 2 people shooting at each other from different cars, and that's when a police car pulled up and then had to kind of back off. We were hearing reports that maybe a Chicago police patrol car had been shot at. We don't know if that is the officer that was wounded or if that was just another patrol car that was shot at. So I believe that's probably that situation that Tracy had witnessed for us. And then she ran back inside the hospital and realized that a shooter or shooters were kind of coming back in the hospital, and that's when she took shelter in that utility closet. So it's just what a chaotic scene here this afternoon.
And I thought the gentleman you just talked to, Clarence, do I have that right? Really described the chaos and the fear so well, captured it. Just the unknown, what's going on here. But his first thoughts were to protect those patients, and he said he took care of 4 different patients and got them to safety. And
4 different patients.
His primary concern, and God bless him for that. Elizabeth Matthews on the scene for us.
Yeah, Elizabeth, are you seeing?
And what do you do in that situation?
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we asked him, have you had an active shooter drill? And he said no, maybe security has. So it's not like they train. We have schools that go through stuff like this, and a lot of businesses, they go through exactly what you would do. The shooter comes in the door, this is what you do. And he kind of said, no, we haven't. Maybe security has, and I'm sure security probably has at most hospitals, including Mercy. But, what do you do? I mean, he was putting people in cars. He didn't, I don't even know if he knew what cars he was putting them in, just getting them out of the hospital.
Doing whatever he could,
not knowing, if the shooter is still around or, what the situation is.
Are you behind you? I see a bus. Are those the warming buses that they're putting people on? We hear that some employees have been taken out of the hospital. It's hard to tell what that is. It looks like a bus behind you, but have been taken out of the hospital.
That's a fire truck. That's a fire truck. Yeah. Okay. So when we first pulled up, maybe about an hour ago or so, we did see a whole string of CTA buses. You can only guess that that's what those buses were there for. I didn't see anybody actually getting in those buses, but when we did pull up, I saw doctors in their jackets and their coats, nurses in their scrubs, all that type of thing, and patients with blankets around them just kind of walking down the sidewalk, not knowing where to go. Maybe they weren't exactly set in that direction of those CTA buses, but in these situations, that is one of the things that the city does. Police get on the scanner and say, hey, we need some place to put these people because they're evacuating the building. Where else are they going to go? It's very cold. It's 30 degrees outside. You can't, just like Clarence, remember we just interviewed Clarence, he was shivering. He needed to get a coat on. So you can only imagine the hundreds of people that are inside with the staff and the doctors and the nurses crews and the receptionists and the patients, where are they going to go when they come out of here? So just looking down the street, which is looking north on Michigan, I do see 2 buses. It's very hard to see. You probably wouldn't be able to see it from our vantage point through a camera, but that's a fire truck that you see behind us. And then just a whole litany of police and SWAT and state police and K-9 units, and it's still a very active scene out here.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you. Check in with us when you get new information. We understand that we have someone on the phone who can give us some insight into the security scene there. Can you tell us? Yes. Hi.
Is this Mike?
Mr. Verdon? Mr.
Michael?
Verdon?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. This is Mike Verdon. We understand that you have done security there at Mercy Hospital. So can you give us some insight into what all of these codes are that we're hearing were called when the scene started?
Yes, I've done previous work at Mercy Hospital and also some other hospitals in the Chicago area as well across the country. Yeah, they have a number of different security codes. Like the most, I guess, egregious code would be Code Silver, which is when you have an active shooter.
Okay.
There's also codes like Code Pink for an infant abduction and a bunch of other codes that the hospital staff is very familiar with. So they can react based on a specific color code.
So, Mike, what is your assessment of Mercy Hospital and the security system that...
This is a Fox 10 News Alert.